Freedom is when your body and your nervous system and your brain and your just whole cellular being knows that you don't have to escape yourself in order to survive the moment that you're in. Hello and welcome to another new episode of Emotional Eating Unwrapped. I'm your host, Alana Kessler, and I'm going to start this episode with a personal story. So my husband is traveling this week, which is totally normal. It happens a lot, not too much, but happens all the time. And the house is now, it's quiet, right? There's extra space. I maybe have slightly earlier bedtime. My eating routines are completely up to me. What I decide to eat, what time I decide to eat, right? Like there's so much unstructure. And I think back to 15 years ago in the same scenario, find myself alone with not a lot of structure, not a lot of distraction, not a lot of someone else being there kind of anchoring my behavior in any way. And it was a completely different feeling because back then, this type of situation where I would know that somebody was leaving and I would know that I would have the house to myself, it would lead to a very different type of experience. It wouldn't lead to what I feel now, which is autonomy. I feel an autonomy and an excitement around autonomy. And, I love when my husband's here, of course, but, I'm looking forward to a couple days by myself and having my own routine and rhythm. Whereas back in the day, alone time felt like permission to engage in my secret behavior. And I think you know what I'm talking about. The secret behavior being binging, the secret behavior being binging and purging, the secret behavior being engaging with food in a way that ultimately was destructive. And I think if you listen to this and you have this experience, you know that it always starts with a physical sensation. And I would find myself anticipating it. Right. And this is what we're going to talk about today. The process of that addictive feeling with food, where it's not just about the food. It's about that tiny flicker of excitement, of anticipation that you may have when you realize that the house is going to be all yours. Right? When you know that and, there's like a ritual that happens. There's an arc of emotion, an emotional experience that happens when you know that what's coming is a lot of space and an opportunity to indulge. And I think that feeling is both exciting and anticipatory and also riddled with fear and shame. And that's what we're going to talk about today. I was definitely one of these people that if you were to look at me and you were to meet me during a regular day, you would never know that this was something that goes through my mind. And I think you probably can relate to this. I wasn't that person who would find herself curled up in bed, unable to move. I definitely was the person that was super high functioning, always got back to people, always showed up, always productive, really normal. I wasn't someone that was consistently falling apart. And I think that's one of the reasons why it was so easy for me to live with this secret behavior and this secret relationship with food for so long, because on the outside during the day, and even during nights, of course, when I wasn't by myself, I was able to manage this part of my personality and this part of my behavior really well. And for many women, you included, if you're listening to this and you're resonating with this, the collapse, it doesn't usually happen where everyone sees it. It usually happens when there's quiet time, when there's silence, when there's an opportunity to be by yourself, when you feel like no one is looking. A lot of time it's in secret, right? It might be when everyone goes to sleep. It might be when you know that your partner is having guys' night or girls' night and you're going to be by yourself, right? And there's this feeling of anticipation of what's coming. And when you feel like the world stops needing something from you because finally there's no one else in your space, the body starts to speak to you. And ultimately, getting into a good conversation with your body, into a healthy conversation with your body, is really the way forward to healing. But for me, before I got to the place of being healed in this way, my body speaking to me always sounded like, waiting for the door to close, waiting for the garage door to close, waiting to get back home after a weekend with family or friends. And I would go to the kitchen. I would either go to the grocery store. I would get the food. I would tell myself, I deserve this. I would have this, feeling of excitement. And I know I keep saying this, but it was like this feeling of anticipatory relief almost, where I would finally be able to exhale and almost like I'd finally be able to be me. And I feel like that's the thing. It's like, can I only be me when I'm doing this thing where I'm almost like dissolving myself with the food? And that's a bigger question, right? That we have to ask ourselves when we do this behavior, because ultimately binging is not about being hungry, right? Ultimately, when it wasn't that I was starving and I needed to eat, it wasn't about hunger at all. It was really the only moment that I felt like I wasn't fielding other people's expectations. I wasn't going to have to anticipate someone else's emotion and respond to it. I didn't have to be what someone else wanted me to be. And that's really what it really comes from. And only the person who struggles with this knows that the binge doesn't start with the first bite of food, right? The binge started the moment that I knew being alone was coming soon. It starts thinking in the future about that time. So if you think about it, one of the biggest costs of binging and purging and all these different things is the moments that you miss while you're thinking about when you're going to do the behavior in the future, right? When you're going to have no interruption. And so while you're thinking about that moment, you're missing the moments that you're actually in. And when I think back, I think that was probably one of the most difficult parts about it, was not really being able to be connected to my life when I wasn't binging. Because, and I'm not saying this was all the time, but I feel like it was very difficult for me in moments when I felt emotionally uncomfortable to still find the good and the positive in those moments, because I was thinking about the future of when I could get relief. And for me, that relief was the uninterrupted time and space where I could be by myself and I could binge. And that's the real drug, right? The real drug is the no one will see me. It's the secrecy. It's the illusion and delusion that this is powerful, that this is giving me my power back. Because the truth of the matter is that's just the opposite, right? Like I was pausing and dissociating and, freezing myself in time so that I could get to this place where I felt like I can get my power back. And it was just such it was so misdirected, because at the end of the day, by the time that the food was in my hand, I was already gone. I had already lost the power. I had already gone from this feeling of anticipatory power, right? Like that feeling of like, okay, I'm going to feel grounded. I'm going to feel powerful. I now was already into the place of being checked out, feeling disconnected from myself. And so the only time I felt really sharp and really in control and the power that I was looking to feel was when I was thinking about how it was going to be when I was by myself and what I thought it was going to give me. What I thought being alone, engaging in these behaviors with the food and binging and, potentially purging, like what that experience was going to make me feel, which was back in control of myself, back being myself. But ultimately, it always ended up with the crash. Not only is it physically so just awful, right? Like after a binge and after any of those episodes with food, you wake up with, a swollen face, a swollen body. You wake up with a stomach that feels like cement, like nothing is moving from a digestion perspective, right? Your digestion shuts down usually for like 24 hours, right? No bowel movements, like nothing is working, right? You have such a headache from the sugar, from the salt, and the exhaustion is just so thick that it's hard to keep up with the persona that, you're able to keep up with for most of the day. And pretty quickly, the shame comes, right? And the promises come, right? Like, I'm never going to do this again. This is the last time. Starting today, it's going to be different. Like, I'm going to recognize this next time. But the next day comes, the next intense emotional experience comes, and the cycle repeats itself. And it's not because you want to binge. It's not even so much because of the food itself, but it's just that this routine, this ritual is the only thing that you feel can connect you to you. Okay. And I think that's a really important thing that, you need to understand is that we oftentimes do this behavior because we think that it's going to bring us closer to ourselves. And ultimately it does the opposite. And I think it's really important. And, I've talked about this a lot, but I didn't stop my binging and purging because I got more disciplined. That's not what happened. I definitely got more boundaried with food, but that came from inner work. That came from really developing a high value, self-loving relationship with myself that was separate from food altogether. Right. And that's what I teach women and men in my programs. Because honestly, if discipline worked, right, emotional eaters, bingers would be like healthy. They'd be the healthiest people on earth. You've built a good life. From the outside, it looks like you have it all together. You eat clean, you work hard, you take care of everyone. But there's this one area that still feels impossible to master, and that is food. You can eat perfectly all day and still end up in the kitchen at night wondering why you keep doing this. You promise yourself you'll start fresh tomorrow, and I know you mean it every single time. But the cycle, it always finds its way back, especially when you're stressed, when you're overwhelmed, or when you're just tired of being the one that's holding it all together. And I get it because I lived that way for years. And what I learned is this: the problem, it was never about food. It was the pressure underneath it, the perfectionism, the self-doubt, the part of me that never felt safe and secure to just be me. And that's why I created the sober eating sequence. It's a proven 3-phase method that rewires the emotional patterns and the belief systems driving overeating so you can relax, trust yourself around food, and release weight completely naturally, without force and without obsession. Because when your body feels secure, it lets go. The cravings quiet, the self-punishment, it softens, and food, it stops being the thing that you have to fix. This is not another plan. This isn't another rule book. It's a revolutionary transformation for your nervous system, for your body, and for your identity. So join the sober eating movement today. But discipline isn't what gets you there. What gets you there is expanding your capacity to hold your emotions, to know yourself, to have conversations with yourself right? I'm not talking about like literal conversations, but energetic conversations with yourself, right? I needed to build capacity so that I could feel my life. I could have experiences and engage with people and put myself into situations that were outside of my comfort zone or that triggered me in some way without needing to disappear into food, right? I needed to be able to end the day and not need to look forward to the time that I was going to be alone so that I could erase the day, so that it's going to be like a restart button into myself, right? Food and binging, and that it's not going to be like a restart, right? And that's what healed me. It was that capacity. It was learning how to navigate real life triggering situations. And I'm not talking about like traumatizing situations. I'm talking about triggering situations. Everyone has their own triggers, right? For me, something that's perfectly normal for someone else could be triggering for me, right? I'm introverted. I'm more introverted than other people. So sometimes when I'm around a lot of people, that is emotionally stimulating for me. That puts my nervous system on higher intensity. And before I knew that about myself, right, that I was introverted and that my value system is to be more quieter and this is what I need for myself. Before I understood that about myself and before I learned how to create the conditions to give that to myself without feeling guilt and without having to apologize for it, that's when I felt like I needed to be alone, isolated, and reconnect to myself and press the restart button back to myself with binging and purging, right? But nervous system capacity and organizing, and it's not just capacity, it's nervous system capacity, and it's also being able to construct your lifestyle that is nervous system supporting and it's personality supporting and it's also unapologetic, right? Because once I did that, I was able to come down from stimulation, from stress in ways that didn't require me to do this really destructive behavior in order to just get myself to a place of a less heightened stimulus state. Because if you think about it, what happens after a binge and a purge and all that? Like you're exhausted, but it's like we're putting ourselves or you're putting yourself through this whole destructive pattern in order to just let yourself kind of feel like rest, right? I think that the thing is when you have this relationship with food that's destructive like this, there's a confusion between rest and exhaustion. It's like we feel like the only way we're able to rest is if we're exhausted. And it's almost like we have to punish ourselves into exhaustion in order to earn rest. And once I learned and retrained my body to come down from this, stimulation and stress that I was feeling because my personality and just because of the way that I absorb energy, once I learned how to do that in ways that didn't require a destructive behavior pattern or it didn't require numbing, right? Once I learned to let discomfort move through me, once I learned how to be with my emotions and be with my feelings and be with the cadence of, the highs and the lows of things, and the constriction and the release of things without needing like a 6-pack of corn muffins to get through it. Once I learned how to do that, that was so freeing. And so fast forward where I'm at now, my husband travels, the house is quiet. It's so different for me, right? I'm not earning rest. I'm not putting myself through fire hoops where I'm putting myself into a punishing obstacle course in order to get to this place where I could feel like I could be me, right? And I think that that's the truth, right? We don't have to punish ourselves so we could be ourselves, right? So now I cook dinner for myself. I eat what sounds good. Maybe it's chicken. Maybe it's pizza. Tonight it's definitely going to be pizza. Very excited about it. Maybe I watch a show. Maybe I read. Maybe I go to bed early. Maybe I stay up till 1 a.m. Who cares, right? There's no ritual waiting for me. I don't have that feeling anymore of like, okay, 5:30, 6 o'clock, I'm going to go to the grocery store and I'm going to get this. And then I'm going to start with this and I'm going to have this and then I'm going to have this. And there's none of that, right? And then finally by 10 p.m. I can, I'll feel so exhausted that I could feel like me. There's no countdown in my head like that. There's no secret mission, right? And it's not because I lost the part of myself that used to binge, right? Like that part of me is still very much there, right? Because there was really nothing broken about her to begin with. Right? It's just that I don't need that ritual. I don't need food to be the reset button anymore. I could be alone and still feel like me, still feel safe in my body. And that is true freedom. That truly is true freedom. Freedom is when your body and your nervous system and your brain and your just whole cellular being knows that you don't have to escape yourself in order to survive the moment that you're in. Right? You don't have to escape yourself in the moment you're in. You don't have to escape yourself in the moment you're in thinking about a future moment where really you're escaping yourself. So if you're listening to this and being alone still feels like you lose control, or you also have this ritual of planning and preparing for binging when you're by yourself, or nights are really hard for you maybe, right? Like the darkness and the quiet and the stillness is really hard for you. I just want you to know that you're not broken, right? You're not doing this. You're not binging. You're not purging because you're weak, right? You're not even doing this because you're addicted to food. You're doing it because your nervous system just doesn't know how to land and be itself. So it's important that you don't make it about the food, right? It's not about taking the food away. It's about teaching your body that it can be alone and still be safe, right? You don't need to dissolve into food to make it to tomorrow, right? You don't need to dissolve into food to be you, right? And that really changes everything. That changes everything. All right. So that's all I have for today. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of Emotional Eating Unwrapped. I am going to go order myself a personal pizza because I'm very excited for that. And I'm going to watch the Wicked show that I think just aired the other night. So I'm really pumped about that. And if you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe. If you are listening on Spotify or Apple, please follow us there as well. And if you're interested in entering our monthly giveaway, where if you leave us a rating and a review on Apple Podcasts and send that screenshot of the review to podcast@bewellbyak.com, or you send that screenshot to our Instagram at bewellbyak.com, you'll be entered in to win a free one-on-one coaching session with me, where I would love to support you in whatever you are working through. So that is all. Thank you so much for listening, and I will see you next time on Emotional Eating Unwrapped.